This little girl reveals a nurse's secret about a millionaire's mother, but just when everyone thought everything was going to be all right, something worse happens. Comment giving a score from 0 to 10. For my story, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The scream echoed through the silent corridor of the most expensive private hospital in the bustling metropolis, causing the 4-year-old street urchin to shrink even further into the dark corner where she was hiding. Her big, frightened eyes watched through the crack in the slightly open door, trying to understand what was happening in the luxurious room, where an elderly lady lay connected to various medical devices. The child had discreetly followed the elegant man once again. The 30-year-old widowed millionaire, with his movie star looks, visited that place every day at the same time. His fortune was known throughout the city, the result of successful investments in Wall Street stocks that had multiplied his wealth impressively. The girl, with her frail appearance that made her seem only 2 years old, had developed a silent obsession with that man. Perhaps it was the gentle way he spoke to the hospital staff, or the deep sadness he carried in his eyes whenever he left that place. In the cold streets of the metropolis, where she had learned to survive on her own, she rarely saw anyone show so much love for another person. On that particular day, she managed to hide in the small supply closet in the hallway, from where she could observe the interior of the room through the slightly ajar door. The dedicated nurse, a middle-aged woman with a motherly appearance and an ever-present smile, prepared the patient's medications with her usual care. The wealthy son talked to his unconscious mother, holding her frail hand while recounting events of the day. He talked about his business, about how his investments in gold were doing well, about small childhood memories he wanted to share. The nurse moved silently around the bed, checking the equipment, adjusting pillows, demonstrating the same maternal zeal that had completely won his trust. It was when the caregiver thought she was alone with the patient that the girl witnessed something that chilled her to the bone. The woman took from her lab coat a small vial that was definitely not part of the prescribed medications. With precise and calculated movements, she added a few drops of the transparent liquid to the IV drip that was slowly flowing into the elderly lady's vein. The child held her breath, her small heart beating so hard that she feared someone might hear it. Her eyes, sharpened by the need to survive on the streets, captured every detail of that suspicious action. The nurse quickly put away the vial, checked her surroundings, and resumed her professional posture just when the millionaire returned to the room after taking an important call about his assets in the hallway. During the following days, the girl tried to process what she had seen. In her childish mind, she knew that something was terribly wrong, but she couldn't fully comprehend the gravity of the situation. She decided to continue observing, developing her own surveillance routine that took her to the hospital every day. Her suspicions intensified when she noticed that the nurse always waited for specific moments to make those mysterious additions to the patient's treatment. Always when she was alone, always with the same hidden vial, always with the same calculated precision that betrayed an already established practice. Courage finally came on a rainy afternoon when the millionaire left the hospital particularly dejected. The girl followed him to the parking lot, where he remained seated in his luxurious car for long minutes, clearly emotional about his mother's deteriorating condition. Gathering all the bravery that a 4-year-old could have, she approached the car window and gently tapped on the glass. The man, surprised, lowered the window and looked at that tiny figure with dirty clothes and disheveled hair. "The lady who takes care of your mother is putting bad stuff in her medicine," said the girl with her tiny but firm voice. The millionaire looked at her with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. A street child, clearly abandoned, making serious accusations against the most trusted professional in the hospital. His first reaction was disbelief, interpreting those words as a desperate attempt by a needy child for attention, or perhaps even a strategy to get money. "Kid, you shouldn't be here alone. "Where are your parents?" he asked, avoiding directly addressing the accusation that seemed absurd. "I saw her putting little drops from a small bottle into the vein feeding tube," insisted the girl, using her own childish language to describe the IV drip. The man sighed, clearly bothered by the situation. His wealth had provided his mother with the best medical care available, and the nurse in question was highly recommended, with impeccable credentials and a solid reputation in the most prestigious hospital in the area. "Look, kid, I understand you might be confused, but this is a very serious situation for games," he said, trying to be gentle but firm. The girl perceived the disbelief in his eyes and felt the same abandonment that she knew well from the streets. Once again, her word was worth nothing to an adult. Once again, she was alone with a truth that no one wanted to hear. 2 weeks passed since that encounter in the parking lot, and the girl couldn't get the look of disdain she had seen in the millionaire's eyes out of her mind. Still, she continued her daily surveillance, hiding through the corridors of the hospital with the agility that only a child accustomed to becoming invisible could have. The wealthy man, on the other hand, tried to completely forget the episode with the street child. His days were consumed by the growing concern for his mother's condition, whose vital signs presented inexplicable fluctuations that left even the most experienced doctors intrigued. His investments in cryptocurrencies and international funds continued to yield substantial dividends, but all his wealth seemed insignificant in the face of the possibility of losing the only family he had left. The dedicated nurse had become even more present in the family's routine, offering emotional support beyond her professional care. She knew intimate details about the millionaire's life, about his business, about his family inheritance, information she had collected during months of casual conversations while taking care of his mother. It was during one of these apparently innocent conversations that the girl, hidden in her usual observation post, made a disturbing discovery. The nurse was asking very specific questions about the family's assets, about wills, about other properties that might exist. Her questions were formulated subtly, disguised as genuine concern for the well-being of the devoted son. "It must be very difficult to take care of all these businesses alone," commented the caregiver while checking the patient's vital signs. "Especially with all these properties and investments that your mother must have left organized for you." The millionaire, exhausted by the emotional tension, responded without suspecting the intentions behind those questions. He talked about the euros saved in special bank accounts, about the investments in treasury bonds that his mother had made so wisely, about the profitability of the family businesses that he had inherited and expanded. The girl observed everything with an attention that her age shouldn't allow, but that the harsh lessons of survival had sharpened. There was something in the nurse's posture, in the way her eyes gleamed when the subject was money, that awakened all the instincts of danger that she had developed living on the streets. 3 days later, the child made a discovery that would change everything. Discreetly following the nurse during her break, she saw her leaving the hospital and walking to a nearby coffee shop. There, the woman met with a man in a dark suit, someone who clearly didn't belong in the medical environment. Hidden behind a pole, the girl managed to overhear fragments of the conversation between the two. The words she captured chilled her. Speed up the process, substantial inheritance, a lot of money involved, and a matter of time. The man handed the nurse an envelope that she quickly put away in her bag, and the two separated as if they had never met. Back at the hospital, the girl observed the nurse's routine with renewed intensity. It was then that she noticed something that had gone unnoticed before. The caregiver possessed a special key that opened a locked cabinet in the supply room, a place where she kept materials that were not part of the hospital's official stock. During a moment when the nurse left to attend to another patient, the child managed to sneak up to that cabinet. What she found inside confirmed her worst fears: vials with altered labels, substances that were definitely not prescribed medications, and a small agenda with names written by hand. Quickly flipping through the pages, she saw several names, ages, and notes that she couldn't read completely, but that included numbers that seemed like dollar amounts. The name of the millionaire's mother was there, along with notes about estimated net worth and a date that was approaching quickly. The sound of footsteps in the hallway alerted her to the nurse's return. The girl quickly closed the cabinet and hid, but not before memorizing some crucial details she had seen. Her mind, sharpened by the need for survival, had mentally photographed each important page of that agenda. That night, while looking for a safe place to sleep on the cold streets of the metropolis, the girl made a decision. She needed to try again to alert the millionaire, even knowing that he probably wouldn't believe her. The elderly lady's life depended on it, and something inside her small heart wouldn't allow her to simply remain silent. The next morning, she waited for him at the entrance to the hospital. When she saw him arriving in his luxurious car, she ran to him with a determination that surprised even herself. "Please, just listen for a little bit," she pleaded, holding onto the sleeve of his expensive suit. "The woman who takes care of your mother is not good. She has hidden medicines and talks to a man in a suit about speeding something up." The millionaire stopped, something in the desperate urgency of the child's voice touching a sensitive chord in his heart. For the first time, he really looked at her, noticing the brilliant intelligence behind those big eyes and the genuine sincerity in her trembling words. "How do you know this?" he asked, crouching down to be at the girl's height. "I see things. I know when people are dangerous," she replied with a seriousness that contrasted drastically with her age. "On the streets, if you don't learn that quickly, bad things happen." For a moment, something changed in the man's expression. The vulnerability of the child, combined with the specificity of her accusations, planted the first seed of doubt in his mind. What if there was some truth in those words? What if his blind trust in the nurse was putting his mother in danger? "Show me," he said finally, surprising himself with his own words. What followed was an unlikely partnership between a multi-millionaire and a street child that would change both lives forever. During the next 3 days, the wealthy man allowed the girl to guide him through the corridors of the hospital, observing patterns that his adult and confident eyes had missed completely. The child showed him how the nurse always checked if she was alone before accessing the locked cabinet, how she waited for specific moments to make the suspicious additions to the treatment, and mainly how her behavior changed drastically when she thought no one was watching. The maternal smile disappeared, being replaced by a calculating and cold expression. "She always looks at the clock before putting the little drops," whispered the girl during one of their observation sessions. "And then she writes something on a little paper that she keeps in her pocket." The millionaire began to notice inconsistencies that he had previously ignored. The nurse knew details about his financial life that he had never shared directly. She asked subtle questions about his investments in stocks, about the profitability of his businesses, about the investments that his mother had made over the years. Information that a medical caregiver shouldn't have an interest in knowing. It was during a deeper investigation that they discovered the first significant twist. Discreetly researching the nurse's professional history, the millionaire discovered that she had worked in another hospital in the city under a slightly different name. The records showed 2 distinct identities, both with apparently legitimate credentials, but with histories that didn't completely align. "How can someone have 2 names?" asked the girl, her childish curiosity mixed with genuine concern. "People who are hiding something," he replied, the reality beginning to form in his mind. "People who don't want to be discovered who they really are." His mother's condition had worsened considerably in recent weeks. The doctors couldn't explain why a patient who was stable had begun to present inexplicable complications. Her organs were failing progressively, as if something was accelerating a process that should be natural and slow. During a particularly tense afternoon, while the nurse attended to another patient, the girl managed to open the suspicious cabinet again. This time, the millionaire was present to see with his own eyes the disturbing content. Vials with clearly altered labels, substances that he didn't recognize, and a detailed agenda with personal information of several elderly patients. "My God," he murmured, flipping through the pages of the agenda. "There are at least 15 names here, all with notes about net worth and family." The girl pointed to a specific section. "Look, your mother's name is here, and there are big numbers next to it." The numbers corresponded exactly to the estimated value of the inheritance that his mother had accumulated over decades of smart investments in gold, international funds, and properties. Information that only he and the family lawyer should know. The most shocking discovery came when they found a second agenda, this one containing details about 3 other cases. 3 elderly patients who had been under the care of the same nurse and who had suffered similar complications to those his mother was facing. All were people without close family, all possessed considerable assets, and all had left substantial inheritances that disappeared mysteriously after their passing. "She is killing rich people who don't have family," whispered the girl with a disturbing clarity for her age. The millionaire felt a chill down his spine when he realized the magnitude of what they were discovering. It wasn't just about his mother. It was about a systematic scheme that had taken lives for money, for assets that included fortunes in euros, investments in cryptocurrencies, and valuable real estate. At that moment, they heard footsteps approaching. The nurse was returning earlier than expected. The millionaire quickly closed the agenda and pushed the girl behind a pile of medical supplies, but not before the caregiver saw them leaving the supply room. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her tone apparently gentle, but with a coldness that hadn't been there before. "We were just looking for a glass of water for the child," he lied, improvising quickly. The nurse looked directly at the girl, and for the first time the child saw something in her eyes that terrified her. She was no longer the maternal woman she pretended to be. She was someone dangerous, someone who had realized that her secrets were being discovered. "How interesting to see you two together," she commented, forcing a smile. "I hope our little visitor isn't causing any trouble or spreading strange stories." The millionaire felt the girl's body stiffen beside him. It was a clear warning, a veiled threat that confirmed everything they had discovered. "Of course not," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's been very well behaved." After the nurse walked away, they both remained silent for long minutes. The tension in the air was palpable, and they knew they had crossed a dangerous line. The woman knew that they knew, and that changed everything. "She's going to try to hurt your mother today," said the girl with a certainty that frightened the man. "Bad people get desperate when they find out someone knows their secrets." That night, the millionaire made a decision that would change the course of their lives. He could no longer trust the hospital system, not when he was sure that a murderer was taking care of his mother. He needed to act, but he knew he would face an opponent much more dangerous and intelligent than he had initially imagined. The nurse wasn't just a common criminal. She was someone who had built a silent empire based on the systematic elimination of wealthy seniors, someone who had studied her victims meticulously and who now knew that her lucrative scheme was at risk of being exposed. The final revelation came in a way that none of them expected. The next morning, while the millionaire was planning how to confront the nurse with the evidence, the girl made a discovery that would change everything forever. Hidden in her usual observation spot, she saw the caregiver talking on the phone with someone, and the words she heard left her paralyzed with horror. "Yes, she was here yesterday. The daughter of the woman you fired 15 years ago," said the nurse, looking directly at where the child was hiding. "Nosy little brat, just like her mother." The girl felt the world spin around her. The nurse wasn't talking about any random child, she was talking about her. But how was that possible? How did that woman know her mother? "Don't worry, it will be easy to solve two problems at once," continued the nurse. "The old bat will kick the bucket today, and the little girl. Well, accidents happen to street kids." Running desperately through the corridors, the girl found the millionaire talking to the doctors about his mother's deteriorating condition. She pulled his sleeve hard, her small eyes filled with tears of terror and confusion. "She knows my mother. She talked about a woman who was fired 15 years ago," she whispered between sobs. The wealthy man crouched down to hear her better, and what she told him left him completely shocked. The pieces of the puzzle finally fit together in a way that he never could have imagined. 15 years ago, his family had fired an employee for theft, a young woman who worked as a cleaning lady in the family mansion and who had been caught trying to steal valuable jewelry from his mother. The scandal had been hushed up to avoid publicity, but the woman had sworn revenge before being kicked off the property. "The nurse is the daughter of the woman you fired," he murmured, the realization hitting him like a bolt of lightning. "She planned all this. And you must be the daughter of someone who worked in our house too." The girl nodded slowly. "My mother always talked about a rich family where she worked. She said they were good people, but that something bad happened and she had to leave." The connection was impossible to ignore. The nurse hadn't chosen his mother randomly as a victim. It was an elaborate revenge against the family that had ruined her own mother's life years ago, and the little street child who had discovered the scheme was the daughter of another employee of the same family, someone who had probably been affected by the scandal at the time. "We need to get out of here now," said the millionaire, picking the girl up in his arms. "She threatened you, and if she is capable of poisoning my mother, she is capable of anything." But when they arrived at the patient's room, it was too late. The nurse was there, preparing an injection that clearly wasn't part of the prescribed treatment. She looked at them with a cold and calculating smile, no longer feigning her maternal mask. "You've arrived just in time to say goodbye," she said, bringing the syringe closer to the intravenous catheter. 15 years waiting for this moment. "Stop!" shouted the millionaire, but the woman laughed bitterly. "Your family destroyed my mother. She never got another job after you accused her of theft. She died in misery, rejected by everyone," she continued, the syringe trembling in her hand. "And this little girl here, daughter of that naive employee who always defended you, who always said you were good people. Where were you when she needed you?" It was then that the girl, with her 4-year-old courage and her intelligence sharpened by survival, did something that no one expected. She screamed with all the strength of her small lungs, a sound so high-pitched and desperate that it echoed throughout the hospital floor. "Help! She's going to kill Grandma! Someone help!" The scream brought doctors and nurses running from all corners. The nurse, realizing that she was surrounded, tried to administer the injection quickly, but the millionaire managed to hold her, fighting for the syringe while shouting for help. The ensuing confusion revealed everything. The agenda with the names of the victims, the vials with lethal substances, and mainly the confession recorded on the millionaire's cell phone, who had started recording as soon as he realized the criminal's intentions. But the biggest revelation was still to come. During the subsequent interrogation, it was discovered that the nurse wasn't acting alone. The man in the suit that the girl had seen in the coffee shop was her accomplice, a corrupt lawyer specializing in forging wills and redirecting inheritances. Together, they had created a network that had already taken at least 12 lives in different hospitals in the area. Bank records revealed immeasurable amounts, millions in dollars, euros, investments in gold and cryptocurrencies, all diverted from the inheritances of lonely seniors. An empire built on suffering and loneliness, operating for more than a decade. The millionaire's mother, fortunately, survived. With the proper treatment and the removal of the substances that were poisoning her body, she began a surprising recovery. In a few weeks, she was conscious again, embracing her son and meeting the little heroine who had saved her life. "How can I thank such a brave little girl?" asked the elderly lady, stroking the child's face. The girl's answer was simple, but touched both of their hearts deeply. I just wanted someone to believe in me. The millionaire, transformed by the experience, made a decision that would change all his priorities. His wealth, his profitable investments, his accumulated fortune, all of that had lost meaning in the face of the possibility of losing the person he loved most, and of almost ignoring the child who saved her. "Do you want to have a real family?" he asked the girl, crouching down to be at her height. The child's big eyes filled with tears of hope. "Really real? Forever?" "Forever," he confirmed, embracing her. Months later, the adoption was made official. The girl who had lived on the cold streets of the metropolis now had a home, a family, and mainly, people who valued her exceptional intelligence and her courage. The millionaire discovered that his true wealth wasn't in his financial assets, but in the unlikely family that destiny had created. Together, they created a foundation to help other abandoned children, especially those who demonstrated special abilities developed by the need for survival. The girl's photographic memory, her sharp observation skills, and her intuition to detect dangers became valuable tools to identify and help other children in similar situations. The nurse and her accomplice were convicted, and the families of the previous victims finally obtained justice. But for the millionaire and his new daughter, the real victory was in the family they had built together, proving that sometimes the deepest connections arise from the most improbable moments. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10. And thank you very much.